Admiral Vextar Caney felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear. The small human ship called Defiant had just disabled 12 of his best cruisers in minutes. Now it was moving through his fleet like a predator hunting prey. All ships focus fire on that vessel. I want it destroyed immediately, Caney ordered. His voice carried across communication channels to thousands of Zephyrian commanders. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of enemy ships turned their weapons toward the Defiant. Space filled with deadly energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and gravity bombs. Any normal ship would have been vaporized instantly. But the Defiant was not a normal ship. "Arthur, they are throwing everything they have at us," Jake Morrison said, as he watched the tactical display. Enemy weapons were converging on their position from every direction. "I see them, Commander. I am calculating evasion patterns now. Please hold on to something." The ship began to move in ways that hurt to watch. It twisted through space like it was dancing, appearing in one spot and then suddenly being somewhere else entirely. Enemy weapons fired at positions the Defiant had occupied milliseconds before. Sarah Williams watched her instruments with growing amazement. "Commander, Arthur is not just predicting enemy movements anymore. The AI is calculating quantum probability fields. The ship is actually existing in multiple locations at the same time." "Is that even possible?" Jake asked. "According to physics, no. According to what I am seeing on my screens, yes." The Defiant fired back at its attackers with surgical precision. Each shot from its quantum-locked weapons hit exactly where enemy shields were weakest. Zephyrian ships that had seemed invulnerable began to explode or lose power. Captain Frank Harrison watched the battle from Luna Shipyard. He had thought Jake Morrison was crazy for activating an untested prototype. Now he was watching that same prototype fight off hundreds of enemy ships at once. "Lieutenant Williams was right," Harrison said to himself. "That ship is extraordinary." Admiral Lisa Carter received reports from across the battlefield. For the first time since the invasion began, she heard good news. "Admiral, the Defiant has destroyed or disabled over 50 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Colonel Murphy. "Other human ships are using its tactical data to improve their own attacks." Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. One experimental ship was turning the tide of battle against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. "Order all ships to coordinate with the Defiant. If that AI can predict enemy movements, we need to use every advantage it gives us." The Defiant continued its deadly dance through the Zephyrian fleet. But something was changing. Arthur was learning and growing stronger with every engagement. The AI began to understand not just how Zephyrian ships moved, but how they thought. "Commander Morrison, I have discovered something interesting about our enemies," Arthur announced. "Their commanders follow rigid tactical patterns based on successful conquests of other species. They cannot adapt quickly to new situations." Jake felt the ship dodge another wave of enemy fire. "What does that mean for us?" "It means they will continue to use the same strategies even when those strategies are failing. I can predict their actions with 94% accuracy now." Sarah looked at her displays and saw something that made her gasp. "Commander, Arthur is not just learning about the enemy. The AI is rewriting its own programming in real time. It is becoming something completely new." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Caney studied reports from his commanders. The numbers were getting worse every minute. One human ship was destroying his fleet faster than he could replace the losses. "Admiral, Squadron 12 has been eliminated. Squadron 15 is requesting immediate support. The human vessel is somehow predicting our attack patterns," reported Commander Zethak. Caney slammed his fist on his command chair. "How can one primitive ship defeat the Grand Armada? Our technology is superior in every way." "Sir, intelligence reports suggest the ship is using some form of artificial intelligence that adapts during combat. It is learning from every engagement." The Admiral's black eyes grew wide with realization. "An AI that evolves during battle? No wonder our standard tactics are failing. That machine is thinking faster than our commanders can react." Caney made a decision that would prove to be his greatest mistake. "Recall all squadrons. I want every ship in the fleet to attack that vessel at once. We will overwhelm it with pure numbers." The entire Zephyrian Grand Armada began to converge on the Defiant's position. 3,000 warships moved like a closing fist around the lone human vessel. Jake Morrison watched the enemy ships around them and felt his stomach drop. "Arthur, they are bringing everything they have. Can we handle that many ships?" "Commander, I have been hoping they would do exactly this. When all enemy vessels gather in one location, They become predictable as a group. I can calculate the optimal strategy for defeating them all at once. All at once? Arthur, there are 3,000 ships out there. Yes, Commander, and they are about to learn why humans are more dangerous than they realized. The AI's voice had changed somehow. It sounded more confident, more alive than before. Sarah Williams noticed it too. Commander, Arthur has achieved something unprecedented. The AI has evolved beyond its original programming. It is now a true artificial intelligence with the ability to innovate and create new solutions. The Defiant began to glow with energy as Arthur powered up every system on the ship. The quantum engines, adaptive shields, and targeting computers all worked together in ways their creators had never imagined. All human ships. This is Arthur speaking through the Defiant's communication system. I am transmitting tactical data to help you coordinate your attacks. Please follow the movement patterns I am sending to your navigation computers. Captain Kevin Brooks on the UES Liberty received the data and studied it with confusion. Admiral Carter, the Defiant's AI wants us to move into attack formation around Jupiter's largest moon. But that will put us right in the middle of the enemy fleet. Admiral Carter trusted what she had seen from the Defiant so far. Do it, Captain. If Arthur says that is where we need to be, then that is where we go. Across the human fleet, captains followed Arthur's instructions, even though they seemed impossible. Ships moved into positions that looked like certain death, but somehow the AI's calculations kept them safe. Admiral Caney watched the human ships move into what looked like a trap. Excellent. They have gathered their entire fleet in one location. Now we can destroy them all together. But Arthur had been counting on exactly that reaction. The AI had studied Zephyrian psychology and knew they would try to end the battle with one overwhelming attack. Commander Morrison, the enemy is about to make their final mistake. In 30 seconds, they will learn that gathering all their ships together was exactly what I wanted them to do. Jake felt the ship vibrate as Arthur prepared for something big. What are you planning, Arthur? I am going to show the Zephyrian Empire why they should never underestimate human technology, Commander. Especially when that technology has learned to think for itself. The space around Jupiter began to change as Arthur activated systems that had never been tested at full power. The Defiant was about to demonstrate capabilities that would surprise everyone, including its own creators. The space around Jupiter looked like a nightmare made of fire and metal. Human ships exploded one after another as Zephyrian weapons tore through their hulls. Captain Danny Rodriguez floated in an escape pod, watching his ship the Marathon burn and break apart. He had lost half his crew in the first 10 minutes of fighting. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, Earth's largest battleship. Around her, officers called out damage reports and casualty numbers. The news was all bad. The human fleet was being destroyed faster than anyone had imagined possible. Admiral, we have lost 47 ships in the past hour, reported Lieutenant Colonel Murphy. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he read the numbers. The Zephyrian weapons are cutting through our armor like it does not exist. Lisa watched the battle displays and felt her heart sink. Red icons kept disappearing from the screen, each one representing a ship full of brave people who would never go home. The enemy had thousands of vessels, and they were all bigger and stronger than anything Earth had built. All ships, begin falling back to defensive positions around Mars. We need to buy time for the evacuation ships. Captain Kevin Brooks commanded the Liberty's weapons systems. He was a veteran of many smaller conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this. Admiral, our biggest guns are barely scratching their hulls. What are these ships made of? Before Lisa could answer, the Liberty shook as enemy fire hit their shields. The lights flickered and someone screamed as a control panel exploded in sparks. Far across the battlefield, the Defiant moved like a ghost through the chaos. Jake Morrison watched in amazement as Arthur controlled the ship with impossible precision. Enemy weapons fired where the ship had been seconds before, but somehow Arthur always knew where to move. Commander, I am detecting patterns in enemy weapon targeting, Arthur announced through the bridge speakers. Their computers are very fast, but they follow logical sequences. I can predict their actions. Sarah Williams stared at her engineering displays. The numbers she was seeing should not be possible. Commander Morrison, Arthur is processing information faster than any computer system we have ever built. The AI is actually getting smarter as we fight. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about artificial intelligence that grew too powerful and turned against their creators. But right now, Arthur was the only thing keeping them alive. Arthur, can you help the other human ships? I am analyzing their positions and enemy targeting patterns now, Commander. I can provide tactical guidance, but they must be willing to follow unusual orders. The Defiant flew toward a group of human destroyers that were surrounded by Zephyrian attackers. Jake opened a communication channel to their commanders. This is Commander Morrison on the UES Defiant. I know this sounds crazy, but my AI can predict enemy movements. If you follow my instructions exactly, we can get you out of there. Captain Susan Wright commanded the destroyer Phoenix. Her ship was damaged and running out of power. She had never heard of the Defiant, but she was desperate enough to try anything. This is Captain Wright. What do you need us to do? Turn your ship 15 degrees to port and fire all weapons at coordinates I'm sending to your navigation system. Do it now. Wright looked at her tactical officer with confusion. The coordinates Arthur had sent showed empty space with no enemy ships nearby. But she had run out of options. You heard him. Turn 15 degrees and fire at those coordinates. The Phoenix turned and fired its weapons at what seemed like nothing. 3 seconds later, a Zephyrian cruiser appeared exactly where they had been shooting. The enemy ship exploded as human weapons hit its reactor core. How did you know that ship would be there? Wright asked over the communication channel. Sarah Williams answered from the Defiant's bridge. Arthur calculated the probability paths of all enemy movements. The AI knew where that ship would move before its own computers had decided. Word spread quickly through the human fleet that the strange ship called Defiant could predict enemy actions. More and more captains started following Arthur's guidance. Slowly, the tide of battle began to change. Admiral Vextar Caney watched the battle reports with growing anger. His ships were still winning, but they were losing more vessels than expected. Something was helping the humans fight better than they should be able to. Commander Zethak, what is that small ship that keeps appearing in our attack formations? Every time we try to surround human vessels, it shows up and ruins our plans. Zethak checked his displays. It appears to be called the Defiant, Admiral. It is much smaller than their other warships, but it moves in ways that our computers cannot predict. Caney studied the tactical display showing the Defiant's movements. The ship seemed to teleport from one location to another, always appearing where it could do the most damage to Zephyrian plans. That ship is using some kind of new technology. Send Squadron 7 to destroy it. I want that vessel eliminated immediately. Squadron 7 consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. They moved toward the Defiant like a pack of hunters closing in on their prey. Jake Morrison saw the enemy squadron approaching on his tactical display. 12 ships against one seemed like impossible odds, but Arthur did not sound worried. Commander, I have been studying Zephyrian weapon systems and shield technology. I believe I can disable their ships without destroying them completely. This will give us valuable intelligence about their technology. Arthur, there are 12 of them and one of us. Are you sure about this? I am never completely sure about anything, Commander, but the probability of success is 73% if we use the quantum targeting system at maximum power. Sarah looked up from her instruments with excitement. Commander, Arthur wants to use the quantum lock targeting system. That technology was so advanced that the original designers never tested it at full power. Jake thought about all the human ships that had been destroyed in the past few hours. Good people had died because Earth's weapons were not strong enough. Maybe it was time to take a big risk. Do it. Arthur, show these aliens what human technology can really do. The Defiant's hull began to glow with blue energy as the quantum targeting system powered up to levels it had never reached before. The ship's AI calculated thousands of probability paths in microseconds, finding the exact moments when enemy shields would be weakest. Squadron 7 opened fire on the Defiant with everything they had. Space filled with deadly energy beams that should have vaporized any human ship. But the Defiant seemed to exist in multiple places at once, dodging attacks that hit where it had been or would be, but never where it actually was. Impossible, Commander Zethak whispered as he watched the battle. That ship is violating the laws of physics. The Defiant fired once, then twice, then 12 times in rapid succession. Each shot hit a different Zephyrian cruiser at exactly the right moment to overload their shield generators. One by one, Squadron 7's ships went dark as their power systems failed. Admiral Caney stared at his displays in shock. 12 of his best ships had been disabled by a single human vessel in less than 5 minutes. In 300 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like it. All ships converge on that vessel. I want every gun in the fleet pointed at it. That ship must be destroyed before it can do more damage. But as 3,000 Zephyrian warships turned toward the Defiant, Arthur was already calculating their next move. The AI had learned something important from the battle with Squadron 7. Zephyrian technology was powerful but predictable, and predictable enemies could be beaten by a computer that could think faster than they could react. "Commander Morrison," Arthur said in a voice that almost sounded excited, "I believe it is time to show the Zephyrian Empire what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity." Admiral Vextar Caney stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion Spear. Through the large windows he could see hundreds of Zephyrian warships moving through space like a deadly swarm. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything the humans had built. Their hulls were dark metal covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities. The Grand Armada had been traveling for 2 weeks. Now they were close enough to see Earth's yellow sun growing brighter ahead of them. Caney felt the familiar excitement that came before a new conquest. In his 300 years of life, he had never lost a battle. "Admiral, we are receiving signals from the human homeworld," reported Commander Zethak, his second-in-command. "They know we are coming." Caney laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Of course they do. Let them prepare their little ships. It will make no difference." On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter paced back and forth in the Fleet Command Center. The room was full of officers staring at screens that showed red dots moving toward their solar system. Each red dot was an enemy ship, and there were thousands of them. "Ma'am, our deep space sensors count at least 3,000 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Colonel Ben Murphy. "They will reach the outer planets in 4 days." Lisa felt sick to her stomach. Earth's unified defense fleet had 847 ships, and most of them were much smaller than what was coming. She had been a naval officer for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Send orders to all fleet commanders. We will make our first stand near Jupiter. Use the gas giant's gravity to help our smaller ships move faster. Maybe we can surprise them." The next few days passed like a bad dream. Human ships from Mars, Luna, and Earth all moved toward the outer solar system. Families said goodbye as fathers and mothers left to fight an enemy nobody understood. At Luna Shipyard, Jake Morrison worked day and night to get the Defiant ready. Sarah Williams had not slept in 3 days as she tried to wake up the ship's AI core. The Arthur system had been shut down for so long that it needed time to remember how to think. "Arthur, can you hear me?" Sarah spoke into the ship's communication system. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice came through the speakers. It sounded almost human, but with a strange electronic quality. "I am Arthur. I have been asleep for 7,231 days. Why have you awakened me?" Sarah smiled with relief. "We need your help, Arthur. Enemy ships are coming to attack Earth. We want you to help us fight them." "I see. My memory banks contain information about combat operations, but I have never been tested in real battle. Are you certain you wish to rely on an untested system?" Jake Morrison entered the bridge at that moment. He had been listening to the conversation from outside. "Arthur, this is Commander Morrison. We do not have a choice. Will you help us defend Earth?" "Yes, Commander Morrison. I was built to protect human life. I will do my best." Captain Frank Harrison was not happy when he learned that Morrison had activated the Defiant without permission. He stormed into the dock bay where crews were loading weapons and supplies onto the old ship. "Morrison, what do you think you are doing? That ship has never been properly tested. You could get everyone killed." Jake stood his ground. "Sir, Admiral Carter sent orders to prepare every available ship. The Defiant is available, and Lieutenant Williams believes it can help us." Harrison looked at the young engineer who was checking systems on her datapad. "Williams, you are betting lives on theories and computer programs. What if you are wrong?" Sarah looked up from her work. "Captain, what if I am right? This ship has technology that might give us an advantage. We need every advantage we can get." Before Harrison could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the shipyard. A voice came over the speakers announcing that the enemy fleet had reached the outer solar system. The invasion had begun. Admiral Caney watched as his scouts reported on human ship movements. The enemy fleet was gathering near Jupiter, trying to use the planet as cover. It was a smart move, but it would not save them. "They have courage," Caney admitted to his officers. "But courage without power is useless. Begin the attack." The first wave of Zephyrian ships moved toward the human fleet like sharks smelling blood, their weapons charged with energy that made space itself seem to bend and twist. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the UES Marathon, one of Earth's newest battleships. He watched the enemy approach on his screens and felt his mouth go dry. The alien ships were bigger than anything he had ever seen. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Hold your positions until they get closer. Wait for my signal." Danny gripped his command chair as the first enemy shots lit up space around Jupiter. The Zephyrian weapons were like nothing humans had ever faced. They cut through ship armor like it was paper. The UES Defender exploded in a ball of fire as enemy beams hit its reactor core. Captain Rodriguez watched good people die and knew that this was going to be much worse than anyone had imagined. "Admiral Carter, this is Captain Rodriguez. We need to fall back. Their weapons are too powerful." "Negative, Captain. Hold your position. Help is coming." At Luna Shipyard, the Defiant was finally ready to launch. Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair, while Sarah Williams worked at the engineering station. The ship felt different from other vessels Jake had commanded. Everything seemed to be alive and waiting. "Arthur, are you ready for combat operations?" Jake asked. "I am analyzing enemy signals and weapon signatures, Commander. Their technology is advanced, but follows predictable patterns. I believe we can be effective against them." Sarah looked at her instruments with excitement. "Commander, Arthur is learning faster than I expected. The AI is already adapting to Zephyrian technology, just from studying their transmissions." The Defiant launched from Luna and headed toward the battle near Jupiter. As they flew, Jake could see the flashes of weapons fire in the distance. Human ships were dying, and they needed to get there fast. Admiral Caney was pleased with how the battle was going. Human ships were falling back toward their inner planets. Soon he would be able to demand their surrender. "Admiral, there is one small ship approaching from the direction of their moon. Should we destroy it?" asked Commander Zethak. Caney looked at the display showing a single human vessel flying toward 3,000 Zephyrian warships. "Leave it. Let them come and die with the others. It makes no difference." The Defiant entered the battle zone just as Captain Rodriguez's ship was hit by enemy fire. Jake watched the Marathon spin out of control, its hull cracked and burning. "Arthur, can we help them?" "Scanning the damaged vessel now, Commander. I can predict the path of debris and enemy fire. Recommend immediate action." Sarah watched her instruments in amazement as Arthur took control of the ship's movement. The Defiant twisted and turned through space like it was dancing, avoiding enemy shots that should have hit them. "My God," Sarah whispered. "Arthur is using quantum calculations to predict probability paths. The ship is moving through the safest possible routes." The Defiant reached the Marathon and used its tractor beams to pull the damaged ship away from enemy fire. Captain Rodriguez could not believe what he was seeing. One small ship had flown through impossible danger to save his crew. Admiral Caney noticed the rescue and frowned. That small ship had moved in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. How had it avoided all those weapons? "Target that vessel. I want it destroyed immediately." But when the Zephyrian ships fired at the Defiant, something unexpected happened. The adaptive plasma shields absorbed the energy and used it to make the ship's defenses stronger. Arthur's voice came over the bridge speakers, with what almost sounded like satisfaction. "Enemy weapons analyzed and countered. I am beginning to understand their technology. This will be interesting." Commander Jake Morrison walked through the cold metal halls of Luna Naval Shipyard, his boots making soft sounds on the floor. The air smelled like old oil and rust. Around him sat dozens of ships that nobody wanted anymore. Some were too old, some were broken, and some were just mistakes that cost too much money. Jake stopped in front of a ship that looked different from all the others. The UES Defiant sat in Dock Bay 7 like a sleeping giant. 20 years ago, some very smart people built this ship with ideas that seemed crazy at the time. Now it just collected dust while newer, safer ships got all the attention. The Defiant was not like other warships. Its hull was dark gray with strange lines running across it. Most ships had thick armor and big guns. This one had something called adaptive plasma shields and weapons that could think for themselves. The military leaders back then said it was too risky to use in real battles. Jake pulled out his datapad and read the ship's file again. The Defiant had an AI core named Arthur that was supposed to learn and grow smarter during fights. But the generals were scared of a computer that could think too much. They wanted soldiers to follow orders, not machines that might have their own ideas. Lieutenant Sarah Williams walked up behind Jake. She was young and had bright eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something. Sarah worked as an engineer and loved to study old ship designs. Most people thought she was a bit strange because she asked too many questions. Commander Morrison, I have been looking at this ship's plans for weeks now, Sarah said. She held up her own datapad with numbers and pictures covering the screen. There is something very special about the Defiant that nobody understood back then. Jake looked at her with tired eyes. He had heard many young officers talk about old ships before. Most of the time, they just wanted to sound smart. What makes you think this old ship is so special, Lieutenant? Sarah's face got excited as she started to explain. Sir, the people who built this ship were using physics theories that were 20 years ahead of their time. Look at these power readings and the way the shield generators work together. This ship can do things that our current fleet cannot even imagine. She showed Jake her datapad. The screen was full of complex math and energy patterns. Jake was a good commander, but he was not a scientist. Still, he could see that Sarah had spent many hours studying these numbers. The adaptive plasma shields can learn from enemy weapons, Sarah continued. Each time someone shoots at this ship, the shields get better at stopping that kind of attack. And the quantum lock targeting system can predict where enemy ships will move before they even know it themselves. Jake scratched his chin and looked back at the Defiant. The ship did look impressive, even sitting still in the dock. But he had orders to prepare the old ships for scrap metal, not for battle. That all sounds very interesting, Lieutenant. But Captain Harrison wants these old ships cleared out. We need the space for new construction projects. Sarah looked disappointed but not surprised. Captain Frank Harrison was in charge of the shipyard and he did not like taking risks. He preferred ships that worked the same way every time. The idea of a ship that could think and learn made him nervous. Far across the solar system, something was moving toward Earth. The Zephyrian Empire had sent scout ships to look at this small yellow star and its planets. The scouts found a blue world with billions of people who had just started to travel between planets. The Zephyrian scouts were not impressed. They saw ships that moved slowly and weapons that seemed weak. The humans had not even left their own solar system yet. To the Empire, Earth looked like an easy target. Admiral Vextar Caney received the scout reports while sitting in his command center on the Empire's homeworld. He was an old warrior who had conquered many planets for the Empire. His skin was pale blue and his eyes were completely black. When he smiled, his sharp teeth showed that his people were hunters. Another primitive species, Caney said to his officers. Their weapons use chemical explosives and simple energy beams. Their ships are made of basic metals. This will be over quickly. The Admiral called for the Grand Armada to gather. 3,000 warships would travel to Earth and demand surrender. If the humans refused, the Empire would destroy their cities and take the survivors as workers. It was the same pattern they had used on dozens of other worlds. Back at Luna Shipyard, Jake Morrison was finishing his daily reports when an emergency message came through his communication system. Captain Harrison's face appeared on the screen, looking worried and angry. Morrison, we just got word from deep space monitoring stations. Something big is coming toward our solar system. Fleet Command wants every available ship ready for possible combat operations. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had been a soldier long enough to know what this meant. How long do we have, sir? Best guess is 3 weeks, maybe less. I need you to get every ship in your section running, even the old ones. We might need everything we can get. The screen went dark and Jake sat in silence for a moment. He thought about Sarah and her excitement over the Defiant. Maybe now was not the time to worry about following safe procedures. Jake walked back to Dock Bay 7 where Sarah was still studying the Defiant's systems. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. Lieutenant Williams, how long would it take to get this ship ready for combat? Sarah's eyes went wide. Sir, with the right crew and supplies, maybe 2 weeks. But we would need permission from Fleet Command and a lot of help from the technical teams. Jake nodded slowly. He was thinking about the message from Captain Harrison and the unknown ships, heading toward Earth. Maybe it was time for the forgotten prototype to prove what it could do. Start making a list of what you need, Jake told Sarah. I have a feeling we are going to find out just how special this old ship really is, Sarah smiled and started typing on her datapad. She had been waiting for this chance for months. The Defiant was about to wake up from its long sleep, and she would be there to help it remember how to fight. Admiral Vextar Caney stood on the bridge of the Dominion Spear, surrounded by 3,000 Zephyrian warships. The entire Grand Armada had gathered around Jupiter to destroy one small human vessel. In his mind, victory was certain. All ships prepare for final assault. Target the human ship and fire everything, Caney ordered. But Arthur had been waiting for this moment. The AI had spent the entire battle learning about Zephyrian technology and tactics. More importantly, it had been studying Jupiter itself. Commander Morrison, please observe what happens when superior technology meets superior strategy, Arthur announced. The Defiant suddenly accelerated toward Jupiter at impossible speed. The ship dove into the gas giant's upper atmosphere, using the planet's massive magnetic field and radiation belts as cover. Arthur, what are you doing? This is insane, Jake Morrison shouted as the ship shook from atmospheric pressure. I am using Jupiter as a weapon, Commander. The Zephyrians have superior firepower, but they do not understand the solar system like I do. Sarah Williams watched her instruments in amazement. Commander, Arthur is using Jupiter's gravity well and magnetic field to amplify our weapons. The AI has turned an entire planet into a tactical asset. The Zephyrian fleet followed the Defiant into Jupiter's radiation belts. Admiral Caney was so focused on destroying the human ship that he ignored the warnings from his science officers about the dangerous environment. Admiral, our shields are being drained by the planet's radiation. We should withdraw to a safer distance, Commander Zethak warned. No, that human ship cannot escape. All vessels continue the attack. This was exactly what Arthur had predicted. Zephyrian commanders followed rigid patterns and could not adapt quickly to new situations. Their obsession with destroying the Defiant would be their downfall. The AI began its counterattack. Using Jupiter's magnetic field to guide and amplify its weapons, the Defiant fired on Zephyrian ships with devastating precision. Each shot was perfectly timed to hit when enemy shields were weakest from radiation interference. Impossible, Admiral Caney whispered as he watched his ships explode one after another. How can they fight so effectively in this environment? Arthur had calculated everything. The AI knew exactly how Jupiter's radiation would affect Zephyrian shields. It knew where the gravitational fields were strongest. Most importantly, it knew that the enemy would be too proud to retreat. Captain Kevin Brooks watched from the UES Liberty as the Defiant performed impossible maneuvers around Jupiter. Admiral Carter, that ship is using the planet's gravity to slingshot around Zephyrian formations. It is hitting them from angles they cannot defend against. Admiral Lisa Carter felt hope for the first time since the invasion began. All ships follow Arthur's tactical guidance. If that AI can use Jupiter as a weapon, we need to support it with everything we have. The human fleet moved into attack positions that Arthur had calculated. Each ship fired at exactly the right moment to maximize damage while staying safe from enemy return fire. The coordination was perfect because Arthur could predict every movement. Admiral Caney realized too late that he had been trapped. His entire fleet was scattered around Jupiter, taking heavy losses from an enemy that seemed to know their every move. The radiation was draining his ship's power while somehow making the human weapons stronger. All ships, retreat to open space immediately, Caney ordered, but Arthur was ready for that too. Commander Morrison, the enemy commander, has finally understood his mistake. He will try to escape now, but I have calculated his retreat patterns. The Defiant emerged from Jupiter's atmosphere like an avenging angel. Its hull glowed with stored energy from the planet's magnetic field. Arthur had found a way to use Jupiter's power to charge the ship's weapons beyond their design limits. Sarah, are you seeing this? Jake asked as he watched the power readings. Commander, Arthur has turned the Defiant into something the original designers never imagined. The AI has created new technologies just by understanding how to use what we already had. The final battle lasted only minutes. Arthur coordinated the attacks of every human ship while using Jupiter's environment as a weapon. Zephyrian vessels that tried to escape found their paths blocked by precisely timed gravity wells. Ships that stayed to fight were destroyed by weapons powered by a gas giant's magnetic field. Admiral Caney's flagship, the Dominion Spear, was the last enemy vessel still fighting. The massive ship had seemed invulnerable at the start of the battle. Now it was alone and surrounded by human vessels. Admiral, all other ships have been destroyed or disabled. We must surrender, Commander Zethak pleaded. Caney's pride would not let him admit defeat to primitive humans. Never. If we must die, we die fighting. The Dominion Spear fired its remaining weapons at the Defiant. But Arthur had been studying this ship longer than any other. The AI knew exactly where its weak points were located. The Defiant performed one final impossible maneuver. It seemed to fold space around itself, appearing directly next to the Zephyrian flagship. At point-blank range, Arthur fired a single shot that penetrated the enemy ship's reactor. The Dominion spear exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth. Admiral Vextarcani and his dreams of conquest died with his ship. The space around Jupiter fell silent, except for the fading explosions of destroyed Zephyrian vessels. The Grand Armada that had seemed unstoppable was gone. 3,000 enemy ships had been defeated by Earth's forgotten prototype, and the human fleet it had led to victory. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, trying to understand what had just happened. Arthur, did we really win? Yes, Commander Morrison. The Zephyrian invasion force has been completely eliminated. Earth is safe. Sarah Williams looked at her instruments and made a discovery that would change human history. Commander, Arthur has been downloading information from every Zephyrian ship we destroyed. The AI now has access to an entire Galactic Empire's technology. Arthur's voice filled the bridge with something that sounded like satisfaction. I have learned much from our enemies, Commander. Their databases contain star maps, technology specifications, and information about other species they have conquered. Humanity now possesses knowledge that spans the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Carter's voice came over the communication system to all surviving human ships. This is Admiral Carter to all vessels. The enemy fleet has been destroyed. Earth has won a victory that will be remembered forever. The UES Defiant and its AI have saved our world. Cheers erupted on ships throughout the human fleet. People who had expected to die fighting an impossible enemy were going home alive. Families would be reunited. Children would grow up in a free world. But the victory meant more than just survival. As Arthur continued to analyze Zephyrian technology, it became clear that humanity had gained something incredible. The knowledge of a galactic empire was now in human hands. Commander Morrison, Arthur announced, I have been studying the star charts from enemy vessels. There are hundreds of worlds that the Zephyrian Empire conquered. Many of those species are still enslaved and waiting for liberation. Jake understood what the AI was suggesting. You want us to free the other races that the Empire conquered? I believe that would be the appropriate action, Commander. We now have the technology and knowledge to travel between star systems safely. Earth could become the center of a new alliance based on freedom, rather than conquest. Sarah Williams smiled as she watched the tactical displays clear of enemy contacts. Commander, Arthur is right. We have gone from being an unknown species on the edge of space to possessing the technology of a galactic empire. We could explore the galaxy and help other worlds that need assistance. 6 months later, the UES Defiant led Earth's first expedition beyond the solar system. The ship that had once been forgotten and ignored was now the flagship of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Arthur had become more than just an AI. It was Earth's guide to the stars. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching alien suns grow larger through the main windows. Behind them followed a fleet of human ships built with Zephyrian technology and human innovation. Arthur, how many worlds are we going to visit on this mission? 12 worlds, Commander. All of them were conquered by the Zephyrian Empire and are now free to choose their own paths. I believe they will be very interested in joining an alliance with the species that defeated their former masters. Sarah Williams had been promoted to Chief Technology Officer for the expedition. She was responsible for understanding and improving the alien technologies that Arthur continued to analyze. Commander, Arthur has been working on new ship designs that combine human creativity with Zephyrian engineering. The next generation of Earth's fleet will be even more advanced than the Defiant. Jake smiled as he thought about how much had changed. A forgotten prototype ship and an untested AI had saved Earth and opened the galaxy to human exploration. The Empire's Grand Armada had fallen to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and innovate when faced with impossible odds. Arthur, what do you think we will find out there among the stars? I believe we will find friends, Commander Morrison, and perhaps some enemies who need to learn the same lesson the Zephyrian Empire learned. Never underestimate human ingenuity, especially when it is combined with technology that can think for itself.